are corporations, and the other few percent are for the black people. Yeah, there's a lot more wrong than we think. So, don't get comfortable. Don't think that, it's not our problem. Even this last election, I put up power of one, not power of one, but party of one. Michael Harris. Long story, I mentioned it to you before, I think, so I'm not going to bore you with it again. Incredible investigative reporter, and the idea was, Mr. Harper's killing us. The native budget for the Atlantic Policy Congress, I mentioned here, under the Assembly of First Nations, operates out of Halifax. Their budget has been cut every year, been cut every time they send money, and it was down to $2.5 million to look after every Indian in the Maritimes, their education, housing, water quality. In the last budget, Mr. Harper said to the country, we've trimmed another $1.5 million. Not 1.5, he took I think $1 billion from the way he put it. And this sounds good. You gotta watch the language. From the government. So yes, he cut Indian affairs $1 billion. 1.5 million of that came out of the Maritimes, that budget, and then we're down to $1 million, look after every Indian in the Maritimes, all those issues. And we had the director stand up in front of us and saying, sorry folks, I can't do this. I've laid off my staff. I don't have money to send people out to help. I don't have money to look after the water issues, even though there's no potable drinking water, on these reserves. He said, so I'm going to tell you what to do. So the last meeting, we tried to figure out how to get rid of Mr. Harper. These are Indians. Indians who said, we don't vote because it's not our system. Well, I went up and took the microphone, and I said to them, I have news for you. Guns weren't ours either. But you learn to use those. And anything that impacts you, anything that's going to destroy you, it's your problem. You got a chance to do something about it? I'd like to think the fact that they got wiped out of the Maritimes might have had something to do with every Indian that went out to vote. And do you realize that in the previous election, they won by as few as 15 votes? Native votes would have changed the majority, and we probably wouldn't have had omnibus bills. But it's not just Native. A lot of people could have made a difference, but apathy isn't one of them. Sitting down saying there's nothing we can do, you got a chance, you got to go do it. And the election is one of the few times you can wield authority over those in power. And they know it. That's why they lie to you. That's why they offer you whatever you want. Sorry, Wayne, I've gone on too long. I got the hint. Okay. How about it? Questions?
Do you want to sit?
No. I'm sorry. No.
Do you want to drink?
But I would have coffee, and so I'm fine. I'll have to wait later. But thank you. She knows I'm a heavy drinker. Coffee. But any question you want to, come on. And don't be politically, oh no, sister, not you. We've already had our discussion.
I want to find out, would you have more hope with Trudeau now in charge over there? Is there any hope that things will be better?
What does somebody say? Replacing one oligarch with another. But, yes. If nothing else, I think that he's going to have to at least behave until he does come up with a decent image, because Mr. Harper, one thing he had no connection with was politics beyond Canada. That's why we're such a disaster right now on the world stage. And it was more than Kyoto. He had no clue about what was going on outside of Canada. So, Mr. Trudeau is already trying to fix that. Once he's got a world stage, I think he might be different. But right now, I think he's going to do his best to create that, at least that image of fixing things. And I believe he does have incredible people behind him. If you listen to the news, you know that there's native content coming through the door on a lot of the ministerial levels. You've got some pretty good legal people coming through the door. And whether or not you like lawyers, they're a necessary part of today's world. And you can only hope that there are good enough people in the system that they'll make it work. He's also taken the shackles off. Even in a local science facility in St. Andrews, I've heard from the scientists where I work that it's different already. So we can hope that he's freed them up to do what they need to do, which is speak out about their science. They've been intimidated, they've been gagged, they've done everything they can to destroy the message. And in some cases, they've destroyed the messenger. A lot of those jobs are gone. You see, when you lay off the knowledge bearers, I was talking to you about our knowledge keepers. You have them too. They're in your systems. DFO is full of knowledgeable people. But they call them packages, etc. There's a forced retirement that's gone through the system. And all these seniors with all their knowledge have been shoved aside. And somehow, we have to find a way to access that to make sure it's not lost. It can be done. It's going to take a lot of work. Nothing's easy. Anything that's worth keeping is worth looking for. So I think I've gone into your question, but yeah, we have hope. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'd like to know if you can exercise your treaty rights, like to go fish clams. I know that part of the treaty rights is to access the plants and medicines that used to be there. The sweetgrass is just about gone because of the sewage dump that they built. But can you exercise your rights to go fish clams? Is that?
Yes.
Great.
And that is the answer. It's not complicated, it's not difficult. Exercising my right is one thing, getting arrested is another.
Okay, so I guess my question was, are you being harassed for exercising your treaty rights?
Not so far, for a couple of reasons. One is that I've tried to avoid the conflict because I can only take on one battle at a time, and I'm hoping that with recognition, the dominoes will fall into place. But when you start battles on all those fronts, you've got to make sure you have the people to do it. And I do not. There are a lot of people, I'm sorry to say it this way, but the truth is there are a lot of people that want to be Passamaquoddy, but they don't want to get involved in any conflict. I'll give you a quick example. You know about, I forget the native name right now, but they call him the Stephenville Megamall in Newfoundland. It started with, I think, 4,000 people after the recognition, so they went to Canada, and then it went from 4,000 to 6,000. From 6,000, it looked like it was going to jump to 10,000. And then the government of Canada said, wait a minute, they are Native peoples, so we should give them their recognition. And they're right, because they're the same relatives that are in Conn River, cousins that have the very same lineage that don't have their recognition. So they can't be Indian. People Conn River Indian. It was totally regionalized. So then once the government of Canada said, okay, looks like we're going to recognize them, the last number I heard is 60,000. I didn't even know there were that many people in Newfoundland. But I'll tell you right now, 60,000 people have applied to be Mi'kmaq out of Stephenville. That's the number. And they expect it to climb. So it's caused a major problem, not just for Canada, but for the natives who are trying to get their recognition. And there's something that was said in a cartoon I remember called The Incredibles. If everybody's special, then nobody's special. I actually think there's a bit of a plot to say that if everybody's got rights, then nobody has special rights. So we've got to watch out for all those things. Yeah, there are problems. Sorry, no, I hope I answered your question. Yes?
Well, this is a related question, but could you clarify a little bit, where are things at nowadays in terms of government status and residency with the Passamaquoddy in Canada and the Canada-US border?
The story is that you can't get them to talk to you, especially about the border issues, until recognition. That's their excuse. So, even though we have all the treaty rights, they'll use that excuse that they don't know if you exist to even talk to you. So, until we come through with proper recognition, that's not really a conversation we'll have. Even though we are having it. We're having it at Indian Affairs levels, the Justice Department, whatever. But until we get down to the border and make sure that that's erased as an issue. You don't erase the border, I know that. It's an invisible line, I know that. But all of the things that it does aren't supposed to happen. The whole UN Declaration, it's about erasing the border for Indigenous peoples. The treaty rights, that's about erasing the border. A treaty called the Jade Treaty. Why is it that the Americans recognize it, Canada doesn't, when they signed the treaty to each other? It wasn't even the natives that did it. Sorry.
So do you mean that an individual, according to Canadian law, can't have status as a Passamaquoddy? There's no such thing according to Canadian? Is that where it's at right now?
Oh boy. You sure you want to go there? Okay. The trick is to do this quick and dirty. So I apologize if it doesn't make sense, because it's all about government. So it goes something like this. Yes, I could be an Indian in Canada if I want to leave the Passamaquoddy behind. If I want to go to Indian Affairs and say I have Indian lineage and I can prove it, then they'll look at me and say, okay, give it to me. I'll go back to when they called John Nicholas an Indian, they give me my lineage, they give me a number, and I'm now an Indian.
But you're not then Passamaquoddy.
But I can't take the Passamaquoddy through the door. I can go to a gas bar and get a discount. I'll have a number that says, I'm a real Indian. But I have to leave my treaty right behind. I have to leave the reservations behind. I have to leave my people in the States behind. That's not a deal. But that's what it would take to become an Indian in Canada. And they have that on the books. The Aboriginal Peoples Council use it. That's how you found out about it. So the Canada will recognize Indians that are Passamaquoddy, but you're only a category. You're not a Passamaquoddy Indian. So I'm trying to take the Passamaquoddy through the door. The trouble is, it's a bottleneck. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to say, the Americans can't go with you. We can't let that happen because these are all my relatives. His treaty rights, when they were signed, it had nothing to do with that border. The same treaty rights apply for everybody that's Passamaquoddy. So, no, I'm not going to leave my relatives behind. But those are the deals they want us to make. If I had made that deal, this would have been done long ago, I guarantee you. But the answer has always been no. This is the way we're going to do it, and this is the only way we'll do it. And I've got the lawyer to defend me, and he's got all the cases. He can sit here and he can go through every one of those cases and say, here's what's pertinent out of this one, here's what's pertinent out of this one, here's what shows, the Corbier decision shows that they can't do that to you, here's what whatever. So all of those decisions, they're just little pieces that you have to build with, and that's what the legal system forces you to do. And it's painful, but if you've got the right person, then you can actually build something that they can't destroy because it's based on their system. What you have to be wary of is the way it gets interpreted. You have to watch out for the way they use precedent. You have to watch out for a single solitary judge who says, no, I'm going to change this. For example, the Marshall decision was about our treaty, and because it happened on the water, when it went to court, the judge said, well, It went to court because people caught in the woods exercising their treaty right. We have martial. No, that doesn't apply in the woods. It only applies on the water. There's nothing in the treaty that says that. Doesn't matter. In our court system, you want it on the water, you can't apply it in the woods. That's interpretation. So, I don't know if I answered your question, but the thing is, it's not simple, but the reality is we just have to stick with it, keep hammering away, and finding a way to make it happen, because we know we're right. We know that there are good people that will help us, and we know that eventually they have to move, because they've been lying about it all along, they've been taking advantage of it, they've been destroying the territory. Why is it that you have a map that shows Maliseet people, Mi'kmaq people, and then there's an empty spot? Whoops, no Indians. You realize when they tried to celebrate 2004 here, they said there were no Indians. The guy that was doing the story, they sent him to the Tobique, and he said, no, we're not the Indians. So he comes back, and he's still looking, so they said, oh, you'll find them in the States. They're Americans. And he goes over there, and they said, well, yeah, we're Passamaquoddy Indians, but you have to speak to that guy over there. And the government of Canada said, look, we're going to send you $1 million to celebrate. That's pretty good, eh? They're going to send $1 million to celebrate 2004. They don't have any money for Passamaquoddy, but they have $1 million for a party about Passamaquoddy. But they were going to celebrate it without us. And so they signed up a fellow by the name of Donald Soktoma. Donald Soktoma is a tribal preservation officer. Donald said, yeah, he's a pretty incredible character, this guy, because he let them get their hooks in. He said, I'm going to let them get their fangs in me real deep. And then I'm going to tell them I represent you. Week before the big celebration, with ministers coming from France, he informed them that if I wasn't on the podium, the Passamaquoddy weren't going to show up. I was first on the podium. Donald Soktoma, not my name. So there are ways of moving that mountain. And by the way, it took people in this town to stand up and say, well, are we going to stand behind them? Because this could get us trouble, etc. And they did. And they stood behind me after that. What can I say? Sometimes it takes something like that to make a difference, but it did. Okay, your people are falling asleep. Shouldn't you be home? Oh no. I mean, yes.
At the beginning, you quickly mentioned Bird Church and something that happened there, and you didn't really elaborate on it.
That's right. Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit?
Oh no, because I didn't know you were taking notes. Escanobity. 1999 started. Big court decision. The Supreme Court passed what they call the Marshall decision based on a treaty of peace and friendship, and I think, I could be wrong, 52, but there's a whole series of them. And the treaties had gone through before, Sparrow, whatever, but to get back to Marshall, and by the way, Marshall's a really interesting character. A lot of you probably know he's a Mi'kmaq who got in trouble in Nova Scotia because he tried to rob a man, except I think the guy had a knife, and in the end, someone gets killed, Marshall gets accused of murder, he goes to jail when he really had nothing to do with it. But he did try to rob a guy. They seem to forget that. However, that gave him a name so that when it came time to push one of the treaties, guess who did it? So Mr. Marshall was out, he catches a bucket of eels. The fishery officer comes along, the fishery officer says, oh, you're breaking the law. Mr. Marshall's like, why? Well, you're catching something and you're not allowed to do that. But my treaty right says I have a right to that. Nope. What are you going to do with them? I'm going to sell them. Okay, you go directly to jail. Do not collect $200. Do not pass go. And we'll see you in court. They take them to court. They lose. So by the name of Bruce Wildsmith, pretty good lawyer, won the case, major decision. So Marshall becomes the name of basically the treaty that won the case. The interesting thing for the Passamaquoddy, that treaty was negotiated in a place we call Quanasquanco. they negotiated that big treaty where I live, in St. Andrews, our home. A problem for Canada. So they tried to get us removed from the treaty. That was their solution. They asked the Supreme Court not to put us down as benefactor to the treaty. And the Supreme Court, it's amazing how judges actually can be quite intelligent, because they said, if there's nobody to negotiate the treaty, there's still a treaty. So they wouldn't let them remove us, the people that negotiated the treaty. You see, the Mi'kmaq that won the case, they weren't even there. Interestingly enough, the Passamaquoddy chief in Quantico negotiated the treaty. A Kapitan came down from Maliseet territory to sign it, not even the chief. And a year later, the Maliseet and the Passamaquoddy convinced the Mi'kmaq to sign it. So the big Marshall decision, and by the way, it wasn't just about catching, because remember what he was going to do? He was going to sell that bucket of eels. Well, it meant that now they've recognized the commercial right. They've played with the language. You're only allowed to make a moderate living. Well, what's a moderate living? Is it what anyone else makes when they sell their produce, or is it something that, where do you get this moderate living? They've never defined it. But they've used that to say that, we're not allowed to harvest more than such and such, such and such. And by the way, in Escanobditch, where the Burn Church, where everything was happening, DFO sent all the fishery officers in there. Literally, they took them off right out of these areas, sent them up there, and they really hammered the Mi'kmaq people. They sent the RCMP in there. I told you about that when I talked about the observers. So the people of Burn Church were out in 12-foot little dories, dinghies, whatever you want to call them, trying to lay down traps. They had 250 traps in the water. And so Canada went back, and they had the Supreme Court revisit the issue because there was such a war in the water. Well, you got the RCMP out there. They had the Army, by the way, waiting to come in. And they had the fishery officers out there. And one of the fishermen actually accosted somebody with a gun. They charged him with it. I don't know if it ever went down. But it was nasty stuff going on in the waters. So all of that was happening. So they went back and they said, for safety reasons, you've got to change that. So guess what? The Supreme Court went to say, yeah, we've got to have somebody administer it. DFO. People that caused the problem get to administer it. Bingo. And what else happens? Because, I'm a guy that worked for DFO. The first day of fishing season, guess how many traps are in the water off that area? Yeah, 1 million. So we were a conservation issue with 250 traps. That's Burn Church. It's a much bigger story. It's about people that got hurt. It's about communities that were divided. It's about Canada, INAC, not liking the government that was there because they were standing up to them. So they sent in an auditor, audited the books and said, that government's got to go. They got rid of that government. They brought in a chief that signed the agreement. It said, Canada's going to administer this fishery, and that's all there is to it. And that's how they did it. So, does that answer your question about Burn Church?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, there's more.
Yeah.
And if you want to hear the real stories, when you get Margaret Trusking here and you get Maria Recchia here, you ask them because they were there and they'll tell you the real behavior, especially of the RCMP.
Yeah.
Wayne, you're stretching, I hope, or you still give me a hint I should go home. Time to go?
Yeah.
Okay. You hear that? The elder says we gotta go. Come on. Enough questions?
I wanted to ask
Sorry,
you,
ma'am.
I wanted to add a comment about the Burn Church. Burn Church was really like a war zone. There was helicopters there all the time, and people wouldn't be able to sleep at night. Children wouldn't be able to sleep at night because those helicopters were constantly over the community. they're talking about, you know, it really felt like a war zone. It was really, really difficult. Burn Church crisis can be Googled if you want to have an idea what it looked like. And then, yeah, Maria and Margaret will be talking about it.
So, the only thing for clarity, the million traps that were out
Mhm.
after fishing season opened, they weren't native fishing.
No,
No, they were commercial.
right. As a matter of fact, a GFO biologist by the name of Jerry Hare, who went in and tried to convince them that this is not a conservation issue. And they kicked him out. By they, I mean DFO, because they didn't want to hear the truth. And the truth was, there's no way they could hurt that fishery with the traps they did. And the reason they only had 250 traps is because every time they put them out, DFO fishery officers were confiscating them. So that's the way they treated our treaty right. And she's right about the helicopters and the lights that were shining in the window at 4 o'clock in the morning and the harassment. It's real. But again, like I said, it's a big story. It's not a little, I'm not doing it justice, but I know that. And again, save it, because the people that were there, I went, I stuck my nose in just to see what's happening. Nobody knows, well, I should say nobody knows I was there, because I ran into friends. But yeah, the real truth is there are some really nasty things happening. Natives may have had the right to fish there. They may have won their treaty right, but the government did not respect it. And now we're back to the question I asked last week, and I asked the Joe about why don't they respect our treaties? Aren't they knowledgeable about them? Because if every fishery officer and every RCMP officer looked at that and said, grief, why do you think they won it in court? Because they had the right to be here to do what they're doing. But they didn't. They said, DFO said we have to shut you down because it's a conservation issue. And conservation came from, not Marshall, Sparrow. Sparrow was a real early decision. I don't know where it was, back to the late 70s, early 80s. And that was one of the first decisions that said natives had the right to fish for cultural, ceremonial, and food sustenance practices. And the only thing above that, the only thing, was conservation. I mean, that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're going to wipe something out, you don't do it. But they put conservation up there. So the lawyers hunkered down in Ottawa. This is the truth, Tom. The lawyers hunkered down in order to, and their one question they had to answer was, how do we defeat this treaty? Can you imagine? We have won a Supreme Court decision, and in Ottawa, the question is, how do we defeat a Supreme Court decision? And the lawyers came back with one word, and it said, the only thing in that decision that you can use is conservation. So they used conservation to hammer us. That's what conservation is. It's a word not to protect. It's a word to deny the natives their rights. And that's the way it's taken. Sorry, and if you want to get into it, there's a whole legal dictionary out there we can have fun with. You won't believe how they redefined words so that there's a legal definition. You wouldn't even recognize the word. I guarantee it.
You need those, if I can add to, I'm sorry, but if I can add, like, those same lawyers, okay, were in Fredericton a couple weekends ago at the Peace and Friendship Treaty Weekend, okay? I was shocked to hear one of them talking about the treaties again. One of the lawyers from Ontario, very special man to many people, and how he was talking about if the treaties wouldn't be there, like and you mentioned northern Quebec, if the treaties wouldn't be there would be an inflow of cash coming to the nations. And the people are all sitting there and nodding and saying, he's a great speaker, he's a great speaker. And I was like, oh my goodness. So it's
No,
still happening.
Yeah. I told you the cash is a horror, the money's a horror story. And I can tell you stories about it, but not tonight. That's another story. Okay, I see she's falling asleep. Good for you. Let's go. No, I mean, what can we do for you?
I was wondering, so did you become Passamaquoddy chief out of necessity for the activism side of it, or what's the story there?
Necessity, absolutely. And I've got to admit, it's nothing I ever wanted to do. Sorry, Wayne. I don't like being chief. But you do what you got to do. And if it's the only way I could get Canada to talk to me, see, I've been doing this since 1970s on my own. And then when Fred Moore was the people's representative, he actually informed me about all these people up in the Mohannis area who were Passamaquoddy. And so they sat down, they actually talked the government of Canada into sitting with them being the Passamaquoddy from the other side, and me, to decide what needed to be done. And that's when they came up with, you need to elect a chief and council. Well, when it came time to sit in a room and vote for that, they just asked me to do it, simply because I was the one that had been doing it all along. So that's how I inherited the position, not because of anything other than wrong place at the wrong time.
Not the right place at the right time.
So I'd be the first to admit to you, I'm not a real chief. I like the fact that they call me Sagu. I like that rather than chief. Chief has so many things associated with it that I don't appreciate, but the Sagu has real respect for it. So, yeah, it's an honor. It's an honor, it's a privilege, it's an incredible position. There's no doubt about it. To represent a people doesn't get any better. Okay.
You know, whenever we were in session, I was a former member of the Joint Tribal Council. I never felt really complete until we sat down with this side of the border with you as the representative, and then I felt like our tribe was really complete, and I think a lot of people feel that way at home. So I hope that that feeling of unity will continue to blossom as we go along with the next generation.
Yeah.
Because we're getting older, you know, and we'll be replaced soon.
You speak for yourself. What is it?
He's forever in the hospital.
Oh well, the hospitals are lucky to have him. Okay, one quick one here. Sorry.
I just had a quick question. What if the date is set for the court case of recognition for Passamaquoddy, and also if what the steps are after that, if recognition is attained, or maybe becoming or attaining legal Indian status, or what the next steps are after that.
Okay. You realize that I'm smart enough to figure out that was two questions?
Yes.
Sorry. So the first one, yes,
Okay.
but not because of what you said. I misled you a little bit.
Okay.
We actually have two other cases. You see, the lawyer that we have, he likes the idea of opening more than one front. So he took Canada to court on two other things. One for the reserves that they took illegally. I told you they still have our names on them. The second one was access to information. We asked them for information on our case. They sent us 189 pages. They blacked out all but 15, 20? Yeah. And of those, they blacked out every number. So you can't trace any money through the whole thing. So we took that, and I actually had to go to Toronto for a hearing with their lawyer, and he asked me the questions, and in the end, when he asked me that question about how much of it was deducted, and I told him, he said, "You've got it backward." And I said, "No, I don't." My lawyer looked at him and said, "No, he doesn't." And he said, "But they told us they gave you 160 some pages, and they only deducted maybe 15. So we took the CD and passed it to him and said, "Here." And the guy called up and I don't think he wants to go to court. But we're gonna figure that out. So yes, there's 2 potential court dates on those 2 issues. Recognition, we're trying not to push it into the court because I don't have $10 million. If you have $10 million, help me. I will gladly go to court with them, and that'll probably solve the case real quick. If they don't really want to go to court, they proved it one day when one of the issues was how are we going to fund the office because they said they didn't have the money to fund the office. So what they were, when my lawyer looked at them and said, well, I need that in writing, and the head of the group said, well, why? And he said, well, because if you're not going to fund us, we have to find another way. And, you know, she's young, she's fairly confident. She looked him in the eye and said, yeah, and what would that be? And he said, we go to court. You should have seen her lawyer. This lawyer I'm telling you about looked at her like that. And she couldn't look back. And all of a sudden it was like, well, we haven't looked at all the possible other revenue. There might still be something. I never got funded that fast before. But they don't want us in court. You see, they lose in court. They will lose in court. It will take money. But what they're worried about this time is when they lose to us, they lose to everybody. Because what they've been taking people to court over, especially with treaty rights, a lot of people don't come out with their treaty rights. Everything we've done is based on our treaty right. I mean, if I want a relationship with Canada, why would I want an Indian Act relationship? The Indian Act was meant to assimilate me. But if I can have a treaty relationship, the treaties have lasted for 250 years plus. They have not been able to destroy treaties. Why wouldn't I want a treaty relationship? Our ancestors knew what they were doing. That's the relationship I want with Canada. It's there, it's in writing. All they've got to do is keep their word. We have a relationship and we're off and running. But they want to push me into the Indian Act because they have control of it. And they control you with money. If they don't like what you're doing, they audit you, they replace, we're in church again. And that series, I heard your second question. We're doing the one step at a time. Yes, there's a series of events that have to happen. Yes, we're in discussion with that. But that's I hope we're not just avoiding it. If you want to discuss it, book me next week.
I wish I would have my tobacco. I just changed jacket, and usually I have tobacco in my jacket because I would offer you. I'm very, very curious. Is it because I'm a woman? I don't think so. I'm just curious. What's in the box that you brought there?
Yeah, see, this is. I've been waiting for that question. Isn't there anybody else that wondered?
I was gonna maybe ask you.
Why didn't you ask me that question an hour ago? You could have saved me all this.
I was more interested in
Yeah. Well, that was a dirty trick. Thank you, Manan. Yeah. That is the most powerful bundle in Wabanaki territory. This is the Wabanaki bundle. I ended up with it. Wrong place, wrong time. None of the chiefs showed up at the Wabanaki Confederacy, except this little guy from New Brunswick. And they said, well, it's the Passamaquoddy turn to take the bundle. So we have a big Wabanaki Confederacy. The Wabanaki is the gathering of all the tribal nations in this east coast, which if you start with the Mi'kmaq, the Maliseet, and I'm going to call them the Willistook. There's a reason I'll do that. The Passamaquoddy, the Penobscot, and part of this celebration was to bring a tribe back called the Wabanaki. They've been left out for years, mostly by governments. Their lack of recognition, everything is coming back for them. We put them back in the Confederacy. We had an incredible Confederacy meeting down in Vermont, and the bundle that was put together that travels throughout the Confederacies, voila. So when they said, this has to go to Passamaquoddy territory, they looked around the room. Dwayne Toma was there, and Dwayne said, I'm not taking it. The chief that was supposed to be there didn't show up. The vice chief that was supposed to be there didn't show up. So all of a sudden, everybody's looking at me and, what? Well, you gotta take the bundle. But I'd have to take it back to Canada. I don't know. I'm always worried how they treat me at the border. Well, you gotta take it. Well, yes, but you said the celebration's supposed to be in Saint. Okay, arrange it. So one way or another, I was going to end up with a bundle. So I leave the Confederacy with an incredible bundle. So what you have here is the most powerful bundle in the Wabanaki Confederacy. And I was told that I need to take it with me. I need to have it with me. Probably when I do things like this, it will help me. This is what it's for. And there's so many things about it, but right now, that's why I brought it. I wanted you to be part of it. You're part of it now. It's a story. It'll continue. But what it brings, and I don't have to open it up, and I don't have to show you what it is, because he told me to make sure I put everything back exactly where I find it. I have a memory that won't put me out of the door. So, I'm not taking that apart, but I'll gladly carry it. I'll look after it. And when I brought it through the border, you talk about respect. A lovely young lady. What you got? I mean, I'm on a motorbike. I'm not hiding anything. And I said, well, let me tell you. So I shut the bike off, and I explained what it is. And she said, wow. And I said, want to see it? She said, nope. That's respect. It's amazing where you find it. A young person, beautiful. Yeah. So that's the bundle. And hopefully, when the Confederacy meets next, when do we meet? August, you'll get to see the bundle. It will be opened by an elder, and I believe that will be probably one of the elders that will be there will be the new Grand Chief of the Maliseet Grand Council, Ronnie Trombley. And Ronnie will give that so much respect and reverence. So hopefully there'll be Passamaquoddy elders there. I know there will be. And there'll be Mi'kmaq elders there. The Wabanaki have already made their plans. They're going to be there. And the Penobscot are there. They've got some wonderful elders. Yeah, you got to get rid of these guys that come up and make presentations and talk to the elders. It's so much more enjoyable. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Are you finished?
Me?
Well, you ask all the questions.
That's just fun.
Hang on 1 second.
Hang on. And I'd like to thank the youngest for being very patient. It's freaking out now. Uh-oh. So she slept in my presentation.
So I suspect that we could talk on for many, many more hours, but we just wanted to give you a little token of our appreciation and card, and thank you so much. Not only for tonight, but just for your friendship with SSU and your willingness whenever you're invited to come and share with us.
But it's always a treat. I don't mind saying that. And the other thing is, it's nice to go to a place where people actually listen to you. Lois listens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.